So I'm here at Bryce Canyon National Park in Utah right now. Definitely a beautiful view here. This is a trail here that connects one trail to a parking lot, and there's like no one on it. So figured I'd take the moment to make a video to talk about a few things that I've been thinking of while out here at the national parks. To kind of follow up on some of my previous videos on the national parks, keep in mind I'm at a high altitude right now and I haven't eaten a ton of food today, so I'm a little bit lightheaded. But to keep in mind, like what I was saying in previous videos about the national parks, like I have one video, Contempt for the Visitor at National Parks, which I made couple of years ago, I think. And then more recently, I made my video about Canyon de Chelly, which is the most recent one I posted other than this one. And basically, a common theme I've noticed at national parks lately is that things are becoming a lot more inaccessible, whether due to restrictions on how many people are allowed in, where there's a reservation system, or just due to things being closed, sometimes arbitrarily, like as I said at Canyon de Chelly. Also, there's a trail at Yellowstone near one of the waterfalls that apparently is now permanently closed. They got damaged and they decided, oh, we're not going to try to repair it. And another thing is that I've noticed is that the shuttle bus systems at the national parks, they don't run very late. Like at Zion and here, they only run till like 8 or 8:30 p.m. and that's not even sunset time. And I was just talking to a park ranger about it. She said there's just no demand for it. But I somewhat disagree, and I feel it's one of those cases of induced demand where it's like if the buses ran later, more people would take them because they'd be more reliable, especially for people on long hikes. And I guess it raises the question, as with so many things, are you getting fucked by the left or are you getting fucked by the right? Because I think there's both these things at play here. Like there's a lot of leftists and liberals who, as I said in my previous video about Contempt for the Visitor, they kind of want these parks to just have as few people as possible and to basically leave them to animals and Native Americans and park staff. So that's the one, on the one hand, you have that, like the sort of anti-tourism movement that seeks to just sort of leave the parks as with as few people in them as possible, like kind of like fuck off, we're full. So there's that, and that tends to be more leftists and liberals. But on the other hand, there's also the issue of underfunding, which I think is a problem at the parks too. And in that case, the chief culprit is, conservatives and libertarians who always bitch about more taxes for everything. And they just assume that, everything that the government does is super cheap and it's their fault that they can't do things without spending money on it. They have no problem with paying a lot of money for private sector services and goods, but God forbid they got to shell out even the smallest bit in taxes. So I think there's both those issues going on here, although I can't say which one is the chief culprit. As with so many cases, it's like, are you getting fucked from the left or the right? Sometimes you just don't know who's fucking you harder. So it's like, that's kind of my main issue. And again, obviously these parks are beautiful. There's still plenty of stuff to see, plenty of things to do. But I do get the vibe that with each passing year, there's a little bit less and less because there's more of an attitude of restricting things, of if something is damaged, of not necessarily fixing it, but just closing it permanently. And I can't help but ask, like, what is the reason behind all this? And it's escalated, as with so many things, since the big event in 2020. And I think the big event was the excuse for starting a lot of this, but it hasn't ended. Like the reservation systems that were allegedly put in place because of the big event are still in place at many parks. And things that were closed ostensibly because of the big event are still closed. So, like apparently at Canyon de Chelly, that was the excuse given to close that one overlook. And now they're saying, oh, it's because of crime. It's like, okay, so which is it? But yeah, I do love the parks. I love the parks in US and Canada. I haven't been to too many national parks in other countries. I've been to wilderness areas, but they're not technically national parks in Europe, I think. But yeah, I mean, all things considered, those are kind of my thoughts on like what's happening with national parks and wilderness areas as of late.